you're an eater. It's awesome to have everyone here. Let's make sure that I remember how to run Zoom. Can you all see my PowerPoint? Yes. Okay. I'm going to put it as the full screen. Did it move away from you now, or can you still see it?
We can still see like the presenter view.
Okay. Let's see. I need to do view. How do I get it to just do the regular view? Not done this in a while, guys.
Or if you go to slideshow and put
oh, from beginning. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties. We'll get there. Okay. This echo is called Staying Grounded. It's all about your own self-awareness and student awareness. So I'm Jessie Allard. Welcome. Welcome. I am pictured here with my dog Suki. She's a corgi. I like to say that I work hard so she can live a very lavish, good life. I am a board certified behavior analyst and I'm a licensed board analyst through North Dakota. I am also an early interventionist. I work as a special education adjunct faculty on Minot State campus. I currently work for the North Dakota Center for Persons with Disabilities here on campus. And prior to that, I was a special education teacher from 2011 through 2021. Please, as we're going through, feel free to unmute, ask questions, pop comments in the chat. If you notice, my face is very red. My office is very hot, so I swear I'm not just blushing constantly. It's just real warm in here. Okay, so next. So I just wanted to start off with a quote saying, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Aristotle. So what is self-awareness? It's really the awareness of one's own personality or individuality. It's your ability to perceive and understand the things that make you who you are as an individual. This includes your personality, actions, values, beliefs, emotions, and thoughts. The more, and this was just like a quote that I really like, was that the more familiar we become with our inner terrain, the more sure-footed our teaching and living becomes. So this whole idea of you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself first, right? Like fill your cup up first before you can kind of take care of others. That's going to kind of be the theme throughout this. So what are some benefits of self-awareness? When we're aware of who we are and what we're working on, we are more confident and creative. We make sounder decisions. You're able to build stronger relationships. And we communicate more effectively. So there's some specific benefits that happen with the self-awareness in education settings. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So there's personal strengths and limitations. So knowing ourselves involves identifying our strengths and learning how we can really tap into those attributes. So an example would be if an educator's strength is being inquisitive, she can embrace that importance of asking questions to discover the unknown rather than making assumptions. When we think about our thoughts and feelings, that really helps us to really think about what is it that makes me. It's our perspectives that in our actions that really help to shape who we are. It helps us apply those social emotional skills that we have to understand our own culture and our own beliefs. So this example is in a classroom, we might demonstrate emotional self-awareness by critically reflecting on how unconscious bias could inform our words or our behaviors during class discussion. So if we make an assumption that maybe everyone celebrates Christmas, that's a bias that we could have. That might not be something that everyone celebrates in your classroom. The next one is really understanding your words and actions. As two important modes of communication, words and actions are direct extensions of our thoughts and feelings. We really want to ensure that the words and actions that we're saying are aligned with the messages that we want to give to others, and that those are also aligned with the values that we have. So what the example is, when posing questions to students, such as how would I react if I were treated this way, or how might words have made him feel, we should consider taking a moment to reflect on our own responses to these questions. So just like, you called him a dummy, right? Like, how would that make you feel? That would make me feel sad. Or, just being able to really put words and actions and help to explain those to students. And then opportunities to make amends. We all make mistakes, and acknowledging when and where we're wrong can be a humbling experience. I was in the classroom for many years, and I had to apologize many times to students for becoming frustrated about various things. And it always was a chance for me to really connect with students just as much as I expect them to apologize if they've made mistakes, or apologize if they've hurt friends in our classroom, or if they were rude to other teachers. I also wanted to model that I'm not perfect and I make mistakes, and we can apologize and we can move forward. So the example for this is, when we express regret and offer apologies in class, we not only model open-mindedness and a commitment to reconciliation, but we model that mindset that change and a new beginning are possible. We can apologize for our wrongdoings, move on, and hopefully have a better day. And so this is just a short video about self-conscious and self-awareness. Hoping it'll work. Can you hear it? No. Okay, cannot hear it. Krista, do you know, is there something specific I would need to do?
So stop sharing your screen and then reshare. When you push this share screen button on the bottom left corner, there's a share sound that you need to enable.
Oh, good to know. So I hit share screen advanced. Not see a share sound. Oh, never mind. I see it. I got it. Okay. Good. Now we're on the wrong one. We can get to the right side. Okay. See it now? Or hear it?
Being authentic requires that you first be aware that you are a creative and conscious being, a created self. Awareness is observing. It's being able to objectively watch what's happening inside of you as if it was happening to someone else. It is the observer that is in each of us. We are all born aware. As we grow, our sense of self-awareness develops and allows us to observe at a deeper level what we think, what we feel, what we say, and what we do. Consciousness is a part of your awareness that eventually branches off as it becomes shaped by the sources of influence in our everyday lives. Parents, teachers, peers, and even society as a whole. It is how we normally experience ourselves and how we think we are perceived by the world around us. Being self-conscious, which is fueled by a fear of rejection, is when we make judgments about ourselves based on our own perceptions, as well as how we think we're being perceived by others. When we're being self-conscious, it's typically characterized by what we call our monkey mind, internal dialogue, or our negative self-talk. I'm not as smart as most people. I'm not good enough. I'm too fat. My nose is too big. I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm always, I never. Does any of this sound familiar? Have you ever told yourself something along those lines? Think about a situation that makes you nervous. Maybe it's giving a presentation. And if you hate giving presentations, have you ever listened to what you tell yourself before you gave one? Maybe something along the lines of, I'm not funny or witty. This is going to be a train wreck. What if someone asks a question I can't answer? You know, I'm going to look like a complete idiot if I screw this up. This is our self-critic talking. It repeats its message over and over, and it can often be meaner and harsher toward us than we've ever been towards anyone else. And once our self-critic has successfully convinced us that we are somehow subpar and less than worthwhile, we start to put measures into place to protect ourselves. To achieve, to gain approval, to seek applause, and to avoid rejection and painful situations. When we are consumed with protecting, defending, and managing how others perceive us, it gets in the way. We get in our own way of being aware and being who we really are. This keeps us from bringing our true self into relationships with others, and it keeps others from doing the same with us. The result is that nobody authentically shows up. Instead, we continue to run on autopilot and simply go through the motions. But really, who's in control? It's you. You are. You might think it's your self-critic, but it's you. And even though your self-critic will always be with you, you are the decider, and you get to control what you focus on. So by focusing on your awareness, on your observer, and watching yourself from a distance, you can make some observations. I'm being self-conscious right now. I'm feeling calm and happy. Or I'm experiencing anxiety and stress. And through these simple statements of observation, you are better equipped to choose to be your authentic self.
I just really love that video. After I watched it for the first time, I was like, oh, that just felt like really powerful to realize that how we speak to ourselves really does change I would say behaviors, our mindsets, how we view ourselves. Like it never fails, right? We're always our own worst critics. And it's not always helpful. And that's kind of what we're talking about. So there are two types of self-awareness. So we have the internal, which is how you fit in with your environment. That can be your classroom environment, your home environment, your community, and its impact on others. So these are really thinking about your own inner thoughts, your feelings, behaviors. What are you really good at? What are you not so good at? A weakness of mine is math, for instance. I will never try to go and play poker because I'm terrible at math and I will lose all of my money. And then we have external self-awareness, which is just understanding how other people in that same environment view you. So you're still thinking your own thoughts, feelings, behaviors, your strengths and weaknesses, but are your students thinking, oh, like Miss Jessie's really quiet today. Is she mad at me? Or maybe your husband is wondering, like, you're really snappy. Like, what's wrong? What didn't I do? And that list is probably real long, but that's a whole nother story. But it's how other people are viewing you versus how you're viewing yourself internally. So why does self-awareness matter, especially when we're working with students? So do you ever feel like your day is just dictated by your thoughts? Like if you wake up and you're just like, I just feel off today, then your entire day is off, or you just kind of wake up on the wrong side of the bed and it feels like that's how everything else goes. Do you feel like your thoughts ever dictate how you interact with others? If you are feeling like maybe you're not as good at your job, or you're feeling like someone just really cut you down and that just affects how you interact with students or with peers or coworkers. Do your thoughts sometimes make you feel just exhausted and you just want to shut it off. I wish I was just kind of numb, or it was just blank, right? Like that's too bad. Oh, your kitty passed away. I'm sorry. Like there's no reaction. It's just this, I can't do it. I'm just so mentally exhausted. That happens oftentimes with teachers, paras, admin, when we are pouring out of ourselves to others. We really need to make sure that we're aware of when that's happening so that we can address it. So this is the first scenario, and I really would like this to be a conversation, or throw it in the chat, whatever makes you feel comfortable. So we're going to do 3 parts to this scenario. So we're going to talk about it and then do a few things, talk about the second part. So just kind of keep this in the back of your mind. After recess, Mrs. Johnson's first grade class returns to the classroom. Most students transition back to their desks smoothly, but Sarah, a 6-year-old, starts having a tantrum. She's upset, crying, and refusing to sit down. Other students are watching, and the classroom begins to feel tense. Has anyone experienced something like that? Nod, thumbs up, something. I know, like if you're in an elementary especially, yeah. Like everybody in elementary for sure has felt this experience of like, what's going on? And so these are just some internal reactions that I thought Miss Johnson might be having. But if you have other ideas or things that you felt in these moments, please put it in the chat. So she might be feeling exhausted, like especially if it's cold in North Dakota. You just got all of your own gear off. You're trying to get other little people's gear off. You're exhausted. You're like, what is it? Why are you crying? What do we need? Right? Like you're just trying to get through the day. You need that second cup of coffee. We aren't there yet. Maybe she feels frustrated with what is going on. We just came in, nothing has started yet. There's no expectations. Why are we feeling this? Maybe she's flustered. Other students are watching and they're constantly observing what it is that you're doing. That might make you feel a little anxious and like you gotta get her to calm down because everyone is watching. And if you're busy trying to help Sarah, are the other kids going to start running the classroom? Because that could happen. We've seen it, right? Kids know when teacher is busy and they can decide to start doing something else. Or why does this happen every day, right? That can definitely be exhausting. Yep, and exactly, Elizabeth. It might be confusing, especially if this is left out or out of left field. Younger students sometimes have accidents at recess, so maybe she did. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that she could be crying. You just don't know what that is. And so while she's struggling, we're also thinking about how are we feeling, right? This is about Miss Johnson's internal feelings. What are all of those things that she's going through? So like I said, we're going to keep talking, but kind of keep this scenario in your head. So in that moment, we really want to work on present moment awareness. This is really that process of training yourself to recognize and label when you're having thoughts, behaviors, or feelings that might impact your environment. And so though this is just an example, this is also something that has happened to me in my classroom. And so if you feel comfortable saying I've had something similar, please feel free. But this is a moment where I realized that I was having an anxiety attack. I have an increased heart rate, I have a tight chest, difficulty swallowing, all while I'm trying to give a lesson. Miss Jessie is paying more attention to the way that her chest feels, how fast her heart is beating, than she is to her students in the lesson, right? If we've got something going on internally, whether it's an anxiety attack, it can be stomach issues, whatever, we're now more focused on our own self than we are to our outside environment and to what's happening with the students or what's happening with our lesson. And so the first part is just being able to label that, being able to say, I recognize that I'm having this negative feeling, or I recognize that I'm having an anxiety attack. So being able to label that is step one. And it seems really simple, but in the moment when you're feeling anxiety or you're feeling stressed or emotional, that can be really hard to label. Then next thing that I want to kind of chat about is acceptance and commitment therapy. And so if you were in our first session, we talked a little bit about acceptance and commitment therapy. And the whole point behind it, it's kind of this way of changing your thought process. So instead of trying to change, fight, or repress those inner experiences, such as thoughts, emotions, and sensations, we're trying to focus on how we can relate to them. Our minds, often tell us different stories, right? It's like if somebody looked at you wrong, you're like, why is Krista upset at me? What did I do? Did I forget to answer a text message? Like, she could have been thinking about something else, but I took that look very personal and it wasn't, but that's on me. That's how I'm viewing that situation. Maybe someone answered an email and, we text or words, they have different tones. So I'm taking a response that I got from Jody as kind of snotty. Why is she being snotty? What happened? Right? Those are all our inner feelings that I'm dealing with. And that's what our mind does. It messes with us, right? And it's not always a pleasant thing. And so the idea is that using an acceptance and commitment framework, the content of the thought is not the problem. It's why do we think that, and figuring out, are we creating a problem or is that really a problem, right? Krista looked at me funny. Is that actually a problem or am I making it a bigger deal than necessary? So it's just kind of going through and identifying how we can decide if we are overreacting because our minds are telling us that, but can we change this or is there something else we need to do to address this situation? So when we're focused on our thoughts, we might believe them as an absolute truth. Our thoughts will often dictate or rule our behavior. If we're believing things such as this scenario where it says that I'm useless, that's not a helpful thought, right? That's not going to help us be conducive to living the life that we want. So this thought says, if a person has the thought of I'm useless, and it is completely fused, right? It's stuck together with giving their full attention. They're wholeheartedly believing it and getting caught up in it. They might feel sad or bad about themselves and avoiding doing things that are important and or meaningful to them. And this has happened to me several times, right? If something upsetting happens in your life or you happen to be a little more depressed, like it's really hard to go and want to do those things that bring you joy, whether it's getting your hair and nails done, or maybe it's reading a book, those things that you typically would really enjoy, they just seem like they're not going to give you as much joy if you have all of these fused and negative thoughts. So what we work on is called cognitive diffusion. So you're like, what's cognitive diffusion, Jesse? You're making stuff up. No, I swear I'm not. This is a real thing. Cognitive diffusion is a skill or technique that is primarily used to help you detach or separate or to get some distance from those thoughts and emotions. Viewing thoughts for what they are, just as passing words, pictures, or sensations, facilitates letting them go and being able to be present. So in the moment where I feel like Krista looked at me funny and I'm wondering, like, is she upset at me? I just sit in that. I just like, no, I can think this, but that doesn't make it true. I can feel like she might be upset, but I have no reason to believe that that is an actual fact, right? She's not said anything to me. I've not received a text message saying anything that that's true. That's just something that I'm thinking, and I need to be able to let that go. So Russ Harris is an author, and he wrote ACT Made Simple. And so the idea is really looking at thoughts rather than from thoughts. So rather than really living in that thought, it's just like, okay, it's here and it can go away. Noticing thoughts rather than becoming caught up in, just being like, it's here, I'm having it, but I don't have to keep reliving that, or right, I don't have to get stuck on it. and letting thoughts come and go rather than holding on to them. Yeah, so Krista just stated that she uses Headspace, which is a meditation app, and this exercise has been one of the most beneficial ones. That's awesome. I've never used that app, but it's a good thing to know about and keep in as a resource for you guys. The next thing is just another quote. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf, right? We cannot stop our brain from overthinking or overanalyzing, just like we can't stop when a child is upset and we have a reaction to it, but we can learn how to handle it. We can't stop that we've gotten frustrated. We can't stop that we're exhausted, but we can learn what do we do next. Yeah, I've learned box breathing and use that when things get overwhelming. I don't know what I've heard of box breathing. Maybe when we have a little bit of time at the end, Elizabeth, you can tell me what that is. I don't think I've ever used that. Okay, so acceptance. This is when we engage really in some of that self-evaluation and acceptance, meaning that we can give some thought to what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and how we're acting, and decide, is how we're feeling, thinking, acting, are those aligned with our values? It's acting through the act of allowing these thoughts and feelings to just be there, right? You're not trying to remove them. You're not trying to decrease them. It's just there. And now what do I do? The questions that we're going to talk about as you ask yourself these questions, such as, is this thought, holding on to this thought or belief helpful? Is doing this thought or having this thought causing me suffering, or is it keeping me from being effective at my job? Am I being pushed around by my thoughts? Am I letting my negative thoughts overpower me? So when we use these questions, we're really working on that like workability concept, meaning, are these thoughts and feelings and behaviors that we're doing and engaging in, are they helping us to live that meaningful life? Are we going to take action based on what we know is true, or are we going to sit in those thoughts and move forward with them? And so this act of acceptance and these techniques are really called diffusion. So that's just when, you're separating from it. You're not battling with it. It's just, it's here, it's now, I'm accepting, and I'm letting go. So we're going back to the scenario that we had with Miss Jessie having an anxiety attack. So if we are going to think about present moment awareness and how we were going to help with that situation, Miss Jessie is thinking about her anxiety attack, and we want her to instead think about the lesson that she's teaching and what her students are engaging in. So that's when I look around my environment, right? My environment in that moment is my classroom. I'm looking at my students. I see that Joey has raised her hand. I can hear Dally sneezing behind the bookshelf. I can feel the texture of the marker in my hand. So it's really to stop thinking about the tightness in my chest, to stop thinking about how fast my heart is beating, but to look at what is observable around me, what is real, right? I'm not saying that my chest beating fast or feeling heavy wasn't real, but what are other things that I can focus on instead of that negative feeling? So this really allows Miss Jessie to diffuse from the negative, the anxiety attack, and be present with that observable environment. So really, again, you're labeling what's going on. Oh, yep, grounding yourself and using the 5 heightened senses in those situations. That's exactly it. You really need to know, how are you going to ground yourself in those moments. That's perfect. So this is scenario part 2. Miss Johnson, who's dealing with Sarah, that's crying and upset, and we don't know what's going on. So she takes a deep breath and assesses the situation. She knows she needs to stay grounded before addressing Sarah. She kneels down and next to Sarah and uses a calm and gentle voice to talk to her. She asks open-ended questions to understand what's bothering her and validates her feelings. So remember, those internal thoughts that we kind of talked about could be exhaustion, frustrated, flustered. Why is this happening to me? So now that we've kind of gone through some of those detachment and those reframing our thoughts, how can we reframe some of these thoughts that Mrs. Johnson might be having? I may be exhausted, but is this feeling helpful in the moment? Not when we want to validate, yeah, she's exhausted, but does that change the fact that Sarah needs her help? It doesn't. Is she frustrated? Yep, but is being frustrated keeping her from being effective to help figure out what's going on with Sarah? Am I going to let my frustration stop me from helping this first grader, 6-year-old solve whatever big emotion that she's having and figuring out what's going on? Is she's flustered? Yep, she can be flustered. The whole class is watching. But is this a chance to model patience and understanding for my students that sometimes our classmates have bad moments and we need to be understanding and give them the grace to solve that, right? And then why does this happen to me every day? Am I being pushed around by this thought? Am I here to help my students? Or I am here to help my students. They go through tough things every day, just like I do, right? Just because we feel like this happens every day. They're little people. They go through big emotions all the time, and we're here to help them. Or sometimes it can be high schoolers also have real big emotions. And then you add puberty on top of that. And they need help being able to navigate those just as much. So you're just kind of reframing. I'm feeling all of these things. That's my self-awareness. But what's a better way to look at this? So the aim of diffusion is to really decrease your attachment to those inner experiences, to reduce the believability of those thoughts that yes, you might be exhausted, but what else can you continue to do? You are not less than, you are still a great teacher. You just had a bad moment. To decrease the influence of those thoughts in our behaviors and experiences. Just because I had a frustrated moment, or maybe I didn't act in a way that I'm as proud of, that doesn't mean that I have to continue to take that out on students or on my peers, right? Like I can change how I'm going to take that in. We want it to increase our ability to be present and take effective action. And then to facilitate psychological flexibility. And so one of the reasons that I really wanted to focus on this is because if you have students that are upset, that are tantruming, that are, maybe needing a little more, it can be exhausting. And if we allow ourselves to have reactions with students are yelling at us, or sometimes they swear at us or whatever, if we have a reaction that is not helpful, but it's hurtful to that behavior, we've now increased the student's behavior, but now we've also increased the likelihood that there's tension in that relationship, right? We're here to try to support students, and it's exhausting for everyone. But if we create tension in that relationship because we've allowed our own personal stuff to interfere, then that's on us, right? That's our job to take care of our own needs and our own inner dialogue. It's our job to handle that. It's not our responsibility to put those on the student. So this is scenario part 3. So this is just going to kind of be that part where I really want us to have a good discussion. So after some conversations, Sarah calms down and Mrs. Johnson helps her find a solution to the problem. She also discusses with Sarah ways to cope with similar situations in the future. The classroom atmosphere returns to normal and students resume their activities. So the first question is, and feel free to unmute or put questions or comments in the chat. What strategies do you think Mrs. Johnson could use to teach Sarah and even the rest of the class some self-regulation and coping skills for future situations? Or what are some things that you guys use on a daily, weekly basis to help teach social emotional regulation? Anyone have any good curriculums or stuff they bought off Teachers Pay Teachers? I'm always about working smarter, not harder. I will pay for someone else's good work.
I my son struggles with emotional regulation. He's 5. And the big thing that I'm doing with him is we just do 3 deep breaths. And if we're still kind of chuffling a little bit, then we do more deep breaths until we can talk. And then we use our words and explain what's going on. And I see that helping him. Like I can see him kind of using that to compose himself, and it helps like get out what he needs. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's perfect. Does anyone have to use, I know in early intervention, we often have little pictures of what to do, right? So like there'll be a balloon breathing or a little like the spinner where you blow it out and it makes it move. And so we'll use visuals to help cue kids, or else sensory, like they'll get squishy balls, something like that to keep themselves busy until they're ready to move on, because 2-year-olds often don't always have all the words. Sometimes they have too many, but sometimes they don't have the words to really be able to regulate themselves. Oh, yep, lemon squeezes, belly breaths, rainbow breathing. Yep, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep, I love countdowns. Those are awesome. Sometimes big squishes, right? Depending on the situation, just those like bear hugs can kind of be helpful. So the next question is, how does the teacher's response to the tantrum impact the overall learning environment and the other students' behavior and emotion? So if you're in a situation where you're feeling overwhelmed, or this teacher was stressed, like how do you think the teacher being stressed, or when you've been stressed, how does that impact your students or your classroom? I know when I've been stressed, I swear the students, especially middle schoolers, know. It's when they take advantage of it. And then I feel like they're pushing my buttons, but I also know that's not a real thing. They don't know that they're pushing my buttons. Middle school, maybe a little, but they know they're getting a response from me, and that's what they're after. And so it's up to me to really check my responses as to how. Yep, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I know where I'm at, I actually share a wall with another classroom, and on occasion I'll have a class when there's a class in the other room, and you'll hear furniture getting thrown and hitting the walls. And my students will say, what's going on? And it's always, well, someone's having a tough time. We're all here for a reason. We're all working on stuff. Right now, we're going to work on focusing on us. What do we need to do in our room to focus on us? And just kind of letting them know, like, yeah, I hear it too. And it affects me too. And I think it helps them to validate that we hear those loud sounds and those loud behaviors going on, and it can affect us, and then finding ways to work through it.
Exactly. That's so true. Just because we hear it doesn't mean it doesn't affect everyone, right? It can sound scary. There's been moments where behaviors can sound really scary depending what's going on, and helping students feel safe, even knowing, you know what, there's people there to help them, and we're going to keep doing our thing. Like, it's so important that you model that. So that's awesome, Elizabeth. Does anyone else have any examples that they've used or things that they want to share before we go to the next question?
I kind of have a similar story. Of course, this is coming from like a parent's perspective. My teenager last year was in his resource transition room hour when he like works on homework and all that jazz. And I got a call from the sped teacher saying that he had smashed his phone. And usually like this kid is the kid that like triggers me, because if he yells, like I instantly get like really worked up, and I don't know what it is. It's like just this like implicit instinction type thing that happens. And so thankfully, since I wasn't like there, I was able to kind of like take a step back and like recognize like this is not usual. Like my kid doesn't typically act out in anger, and especially like just destroying property. So it was like, okay, what else is going on? And kind of like just taking a step back and like looking at like, oh, his great grandma has been in and out of the hospital. We went and visited her one time, and it like wasn't a good visit. Like we had to watch doctors come in and give her care. And so just like recognizing when there's probably other things going on in the student's life could be beneficial, and building relationships with parents where they're able to share that with you, so you can have just a little bit more understanding of what else is going on in the student's life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's perfect. It is. The home life can affect so much, and having that um, consistent communication to know what's going on can be crucial sometimes. Um, you never know, and unfortunately, we can only control what's going on the 7-ish hours out of the day that we have them in our rooms. But just knowing that we can provide as much support as possible and knowing what's going on with families is such a big deal. The next question is, what can Mrs. Johnson do to follow up with Sarah to ensure that the issue is resolved and support her emotional well-being in the long term? I know this kind of depends on what the scenario was, right? But has anyone felt like they really, I'm losing my words today. Has anyone ever been in that situation where you're like, how do I continue to support this kid? Like, you've handled it, but you feel like it's not really resolved. And do you know what I'm talking about? Where like you've dealt with, maybe it was a potty training issue, or maybe it was, her zipper on her coat broke, and so she was extra cold or whatever. But you know that with this family or with this child, things might not be resolved. How do you handle that? Or is there a way that you keep in constant conversation or communication with parents that kind of aid with those things? Go ahead, Elizabeth. Go for it. You're my favorite today. You just got all
Sorry.
the
I'm sorry. We have a lot of situations where we call it establishing therapeutic rapport or reestablishing therapeutic rapport. We had a situation where a young lady was assaulting another student, and I was the first adult there, and I kind of scooched her back and we got them separated, and I was like, it kind of got to this point where I was like, can you just come to my classroom with me? Like, can we leave this situation? And she walked to my classroom, and it turned out she had to go on out of school suspension. Well, where we are, we have the school parking lot, and then we have a residential facility where the kids live. And so I told my boss a couple hours later during my prep, I'm like, hey, I'm going over to the residential side. I want to go and check on such and such student. And, I went and sat down with her, and we just kind of had a conversation like, are we good? Was there anything we could have done to help you better in that situation? Was there anything we could have done to prevent that situation? And just kind of had a very candid conversation about what went down, what could have been done differently, how are we going to handle it in the future? And so I found that that's a good strategy, at least with the kids that I work with. Like, just let's talk about what happened.
Yep, that check-in once it's kind of handled, to go back in and see how can we have done things different, or how can we support you. That's so crucial. Once everyone's calmed and the emotions aren't heightened anymore, to go back in and really, that helps to just build that rapport to say, hey, like, I'm not perfect. If there's something I can do better to help you, just let me know, right? And even little kids know, they can say, I need a hug, or I needed this, right? So that's just such an important strategy. So thank you for sharing. I love that. So there's just 2 slides left. The references, I used some different books and a dissertation that was really interesting, a couple of websites, and then here's some resources for you guys. They are all linked. There's a couple of different websites. I love a good TED Talk and video, so those are also included. And then a couple of books. I have read The Happiness Trap, How to Stay Human in a Blanked Up World. Don't let the title fool you. It is a very good book. It's a little sassy title, but we work in education. We should be used to sassy, right? We all have those kids. But it's a very good book. And then The Wisdom of Your Body. And Permission to Feel had some really great ratings, and I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I have not personally read it. But if anyone has, please let me know how it is. And thank you. I forgot to make a thank you slide, but that's it. I totally appreciate all of you coming. Next week, we have a speaker coming in, Dr. Shelby Dorsey. And she is also a board certified behavior analyst, but has been doing this for many more years than I have. And she is focusing on trauma-informed classroom practices. She's phenomenal. I'm very excited to listen to her. So please, if you can join us next week, you'll get a break from me. That's worth the class. But thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Krista has put in a survey or not a survey, an evaluation. So if you have a minute, please fill that out. Let us know what's working. If you would like to contact us, that you have a kid, that you have a scenario, like, I don't know what to do, I'm stressed out, please let us know. We don't have the answers. We have a big center that we can reach out and get additional support as well to help answer those questions for you. Because by no means have all the answers. It's a team approach for a reason, right? So yeah, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we go?
I did have a couple people reach out and ask about where the recordings are going to be available. We do have a YouTube playlist, and I'll send out an additional resource. Yeah, Liz, if somebody could, I can't remember who mentioned the box breathing activity, but if they could talk about that a little bit, that would be awesome. And we will include all these suggestions that you've put into the chat in our additional resources that we send out, along with the links to the recording. So yeah, if you could take a moment and tell us what box breathing is, that'd be awesome.
So box breathing is actually a form of meditation, but it's great for those of us like me that stink at the actual meditation act. Like, it's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to be meditating, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I'm meditating. So it gives you a task. So if you imagine a box in front of you, what you do is you breathe up one side, counting slowly to the count of 4. And then you hold it for the count of 4. And then you breathe out for the count of 4 and hold for the count of 4 across the bottom of the box. That's one cycle of box breathing. And so you're just thinking about counting 1, 2, 3, 4 over and over and over again. And you do 5 cycles. And at the end of it, it takes about 4 minutes to do the 5 cycles. But at the end of it, it's so calming, and it's like you've kind of done a brain reset. And so I've done it with professional development that I taught, and the feedback that I got from that group was, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And then I've done it with some students, and my students that I've done it with are like, oh, so it's like deep breathing, but like you actually are concentrating on something while you're deep breathing. So it's actually distracting me from what made me angry. So that's what box breathing is. It's like deceptively simple, and I love it.
That is awesome. That's the kind of meditating I can actually do.
See? Telling you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll find like a little link to a little bit more information on box breathing. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for being here, and we hope to see you next week. And we will send out the additional resources and a link to the recording probably by Friday, if not Monday. So yeah, please take a moment to